What's going on, family? This is the Scrapbook Boxing Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuffs series. I want to take a look at a dynamic junior middleweight champion by the name of Ronald Winky Wright. Fascinating fighter. He was a master of the pillar defense. The only fighter that I can recall right now that would have a defense like that would be Irish Mickey Ward. Those two fighters had those pillar defense. It was very difficult for you to get a hook around them or a wild left hand or right hand around it. You had to have a master jab in order to fight a fighter like that. You would have to feint him, get him to drop his hands a little bit, feint hook, and then shoot a straight right hand or a jab. But outside of that, he was a dynamic fighter. He was born November 26, 1971 in Washington, D.C. He stood 5'10.5" and weighed 147 to 170 pounds. He had a 77-inch reach. Fascinating. He was from St. Peters, Florida, and he had a friend by the name of Left Hook Lacey. Jeff Left Hook Lacey, 2000 Olympian, former IBF super middleweight champion of the world. He lost his title to Joe Calzaghe, who would be a Hall of Famer. Joe Calzaghe would also defeat Bernard Hopkins as well as Roy Jones. So that is not a bad thing that happened to Jeff Hook Lacey. He was a shorter man trying to come in. And Joe Calzaghe just had more experience than he had. So those are two good fighters out of St. Petersburg. But Ronald Winky Wright would capture a lot of titles. He would get the WBC light middleweight champion of the world, WBA light middleweight championship of the world, the IBF light middleweight championship of the world, WBO light middleweight championship of the world, the NABF light middleweight championship of the world, as well as the USBA light middleweight championship of the world. Fascinating. Fascinating as I'm actually examining his career. He was a fascinating fighter. He would fight fighters such as Ike Corte. Ike Corte would have a good fight, 6 rounds that lasted, with Oscar De La Hoya. At the time, Oscar De La Hoya was a golden boy. They both dropped each other 1 time each. And he got caught in the ropes. Oscar De La Hoya threw about 50 or 60 punches. The referee jumped in and stopped the fight. But Ike Corte was a very good fighter. He was managed by Roy Jones, excuse me. He was in that camp for a little while and just came up short in that fight with Oscar De La Hoya. Winky Wright would face Sugar Shane Mosley. Sugar Shane Mosley, they had 2 fights. He would defeat him both times. And that was a fascinating fight. You know, you just got to take your hat off to fighters at times when it's deserved. And I've always respected Ronald Winky Wright. I thought he was a stand-up guy. He was a guy that fought everybody, never backed down. And those are the type of fighters that I respect. On the line, the titles were WBC Light Middleweight Championship of the World, WBA Light Middleweight Championship of the World, and the IBF Light Middleweight Championship of the World. I got to tell you something. Winky Wright was a dynamic fighter. You know, as I'm examining these fights that he actually fought. Sugar Shane Mosley, he actually ruled the lightweight division. I think he had something like 32 fights with 30 knockouts. He lost 2 welterweight championship fights to Vernon Forrest, RIP to him. I was at the first fight that he fought, Vernon Forrest, and after the headbutt, he was never the same. But he just couldn't figure out Vernon Forrest. Too tall, too hard of a puncher, and he wouldn't let you get past that jab. So Sugar Shane Mosley was a good fighter, but he just had his weaknesses with certain fighters. November 20th, he would have a rematch with Sugar Shane Mosley. And on the line that time was the WBC Light Middleweight Championship of the World and WBA Light Middleweight Championship of the World. He'd be stripped because Mosley was not the man in choice for the IBF strap, and they would take that belt away from him. 2005, he would face Felix Tito Trinidad, May 14th of that year, Las Vegas, Nevada. He would defeat him in 12 rounds. Trinidad was a dynamic fighter. Remember when he fought the Thin Man? And that was a superb fight when he fought the Thin Man. And those of you who don't know who the Thin Man is, it would be the IBF welterweight champion of the world, Maurice Blocker. Maurice Blocker was the Thin Man, and he took the title away from Glenwood the Real Beast Brown. But he would lose the title to Tito Trinidad on a vicious left hook. So Trinidad was the goods. He would lose, obviously, to Roy Jones, and he would lose to Bernard Hopkins. I was at that fight, 2001, right after 9/11. And that was some fight. I'll tell you, that was some fight by Trinidad. But he got knocked out in the 12 rounds by Bernard Hopkins. And I had a lot of respect for him. He tried to get up, he couldn't. Bernard Hopkins was too much for him. But Trinidad really wasn't a middleweight. He defeated William Joppy for one of the belts. And he just couldn't, he didn't have the chin. That's what the problem was. When he got dropped from a punch from Fernando Vargas, after Vargas had been hurt twice, that told me that he couldn't really take a punch. And that was welterweight. It wasn't even junior middleweight. That was welterweight. And when he went up to middleweight, he just couldn't take the punch, couldn't take the pressure of a middleweight fighter. But he was an outstanding fighter, was Felix Tito Trinidad. So salute to him. The WBC middleweight championship was on the line. It was an elimination bout. And he came up victorious against Felix Trinidad. Salute to him. December 10th. Salmon. WBC IBF middleweight championship elimination bout. He defeated him. So that put him in line to face the WBC and the WBA middleweight champion of the world, Jermaine Taylor. June 17th. And he would have a 12-round draw. You know, things never went his way. I felt he won that fight. Jermaine Taylor, you know, he was in line to face Bernard Hopkins again, and they couldn't risk that big money fight. They made it a draw. Figured we would forget about it years later. I've never forgotten about that. December 2nd, Ike Corte, 2006. WBA middleweight championship of the world on the line. And he didn't get past that situation with Jermaine Taylor. So he did win a 12-round victory over Ike Corte, Tampa, Florida. 2007, July 21st, he would face Bernard the Executioner Hopkins. Las Vegas, Nevada, he would lose a 12-round fight to Bernard Hopkins. Bernard Hopkins was he was a master. He took him to school. That was a legitimate loss on behalf of Winky Wright. But it was a very, very good fight, good entertaining fight. You got to give him credit for it. By the way, that Fernando Vargas fight, I remember Fernando Vargas came out with that white tiger, similar tiger that Mike Tyson had in his credit card budget. But there was no way in the world that Fernando Vargas had won that fight. No way in the world. He would face Paul Williams. 2009, April 11th, Las Vegas, Nevada. He would lose to him in 12 rounds. Paul Williams was a dynamite fighter. I believe he was the one that could have upset Floyd Mayweather, but we would never know that because the opportunity never presented itself. Unfortunately for Paul Williams, he was in an accident outside the ring. And right now he's just in a wheelchair. High spirits. Salute to Paul Williams. And then 2012, he would face a fighter by the name of Peter Quillen. Calls himself Kid Chocolate. June 2nd of that year. Carson City, California. He would lose to him in 10 rounds. And that would be about it for Ronald Winky Wright. But Ronald Winky Wright was a fascinating fighter. Hall of Fame fighter all the way. Unfortunately for him, he just came up short with some of the big ones. But he was an outstanding fighter, and I just wanted to pay homage to Ronald Winky Wright. I want to salute to my subscribers. Thank you for hanging in there with me. This is Scrapbook Boxing Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuff series. Look out for the new channel, Ringside Historians. Peace.